All right, welcome back to Honored Madman, and I hope everybody's doing well. Now, I thought I would be here to talk about the Peacemaker finale in a similar way that I talk about the first season's finale, because it really was, again, a perfect season and a perfect finale. There's so many, little things that tie together that just really do make the first season of Peacemaker like a masterstroke. I do think it's, the best thing that James Gunn has ever made. The second season is quite a bit more uneven. There's a lot to love, and there's some really interesting concepts that are explored, but not really explored in their entirety. But, we'll get into it. I think I talked a little bit in my last video about how it felt like they were rehashing a lot of the same old jokes from the first season. They were just kind of callback jokes. A lot of the same exact things just happened, but, slightly different in this, at least in the first episode of this season. And they were sort of just reminding people, I guess, of all the jokes and the previous interactions some of these characters have had with each other and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that, I guess. Although I did notice that it was a little bit less funny this time. For example, the Adrian knowing animal facts. This was, I believe, brought up once, maybe twice in the first season, if at all. I believe it was ants in the first season. Now this time it's basically the only thing he talks about. Now I guess you could look at it as this is his way of attempting to interact with other people. He thinks that, what's something that people would like to talk about? Animal facts. But, he's a bit narcissistic, so he's quiz me on my knowledge, my infinite knowledge of animal facts. So it's not that this joke has no explanation or point in the story. It does. It's just done a great number of times throughout the season. Now, a big draw this time around was the alternate dimensions, namely what turned out to be Earth X. Now, I said in my video a bunch how I didn't necessarily want it to be that, only because that's what everybody had decided that it was for sure. And it turns out, what I usually think is a red herring is usually a foreshadowed conclusion, and that was the case here with the Nazi world. And look, fully exploring the other dimension was never something that was on the menu anyway, since it was all just this story device or plot device sort of thing used to develop Chris, aka Peacemaker's emotional trauma and all that good stuff. It's all there to advance it. That's really the purpose of this Nazi world. So I guess that could be the reason why we didn't get to explore it very much, although it does feel like we'll come back to it with Keith surviving. Now, okay, so this review is probably going to be all over the place, similar to the episode that we're covering, but one thing that the finale reminded me quite a bit of was Twin Peaks: The Return, and not necessarily in a good way, in a way that really kind of gives you no real conclusions and kind of doesn't really even feel like the same show or even a season finale. And also, as is the case with Twin Peaks: The Return, it feels like most of the main story was sort of tied up in the penultimate, the second to last episode. But for me, I guess the comparisons don't really stop there. This was a very, very overindulgent episode for James Gunn, and that doesn't always have to be a bad thing. The Twin Peaks: The Return is David Lynch at his most self-indulgent, and that is for the better. That's good. I'd much rather watch the Return than, say, Inland Empire. And I don't hate Inland Empire. I got nothing against it. It's just probably my least favorite Lynch movie, which is something that's probably blasphemous to say. But it's a good thing we're not talking about that today. And I think the main reason I'm bringing this up is I believe this is an episode that is only possible, that you can only get without any kind of studio interference or oversight. This is what happens when they fully let an artist maybe cook or overcook something too much. This is more or less what it looks like. You could just fully see the writer's DNA on every frame, and every frame isn't exactly a masterstroke. And again, I'm not hating. This season was still pretty good. It just wasn't as good as the first season, in my humble opinion. There was a lot of great acting, a lot of great jokes. There was a lot of cool stuff that definitely happened. Even in this final episode, like the scene in the hotel room, even Vigilante tackling Peacemaker, we got to take our wins where we can get them. But look, when the episode had 2 full live performances in it, I mean, you can't help but notice the James Gunn's DNA. You can't help but see it in what you're watching. And while that can be a good thing, like when you're watching certain stuff, any scene with Vigilante from the first season, that's excellent. You can just kind of, feel the James Gunn in those scenes, but it's not, to the scene's detriment. Here, I believe it's a bit to the episode's detriment, but that's only because there wasn't enough plot moving forward or action or really exploration outside of that hotel room. We just got a bunch of montages. And I do think had the season ended with the previous episode, or even after they founded Checkmate in the finale, that really there wouldn't be too much complaint. It would feel like a season finale. But to throw in this last little bit of Rick Flag, one of the most hateable characters ever, getting his little bit of petty revenge at the expense of the taxpayers' dollar and countless government agents' lives, he sticks Peacemaker on a deserted, well, not so deserted planet, a planet with presumably some sort of alien dinosaurs on it, as his final way of getting revenge against Chris, aka the Peacemaker. And I don't think this is a bittersweet ending. I mean, yes, there were some sweet things that happened, and then there were some bitter things that happened, but that does not a bittersweet ending make. A perfect example of a bittersweet ending was the ending of the first season, with Peacemaker having to make this choice to kill the butterflies for good, as well as his dad, both things that are going to be positives for him moving forward, but they're hard decisions. They're not like, so black and white. Like, Peacemaker loves his dad even though his dad hated him and was an evil racist bastard. Plus, his dad is a big part of his upbringing. He's who raised him, he's who taught him how to kill, he's who taught him mostly everything. Well, all of the bad shit. And we see that even though Chris finally escaped the influence of his daddy, he shot him in the head, we see that he isn't free of him. He's going to be haunted by him. He's got this internalized trauma that this damage his dad had done to him. It isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And that's perfectly illustrated by how we see a deranged-looking Augie move in and sit next to him in the final frames of the first season. It's just really done. That's a bit of a bittersweet ending. Like, yes, we know Chris is better. He has a found family now, but he is not fully moved on or healed from his previous trauma and his regrets, like killing Rick Flag and, the damage his dad did. This ending really did just feel out of nowhere. And again, I feel like with the framing and the writing, we're still supposed to be somehow on Rick Flag's side. And yeah, I imagine that is like the average idiot takeaway. Rick Flag's son was killed by Peacemaker, so of course he wants to, get revenge, and it's kind of justified, because wouldn't you want to do it? But again, it's not looking at the whole situation. Peacemaker had a bomb in his neck. He was ordered to keep the peace at any cost, and yes, there's many scenarios that could have worked out with his neck bomb not being blown and Rick Flag walking away from it alive. But Peacemaker doesn't really have any platform of negotiation. He can't really negotiate with Waller, so he's just trying to get Rick Flag to not, expose this evidence to the press in that scene, and Rick Flag just can't comply. He spent his life doing dark cover-up secrets for the American government, and he's just had enough. He's having his crisis of conscience, and no matter the cost, he's gonna just expose these dirty secrets, no matter what it leads to. Peacemaker's a guy who's all about peace. He wants to keep the peace at any cost, plus he wants to keep his life, so he's forced to kill Rick Flag. Now, Senior does bring up, Harcourt disobeyed Waller. He disobeyed Waller as well. Peacemaker didn't, though. He just followed orders. Well, I think the key difference is that Peacemaker had the bomb in his neck, and Harcourt and Senior are both government agents who swore oaths to defend this country under any circumstances. They might get fired if they disobey an order, but they're not going to be killed. Waller can literally just press a button and end him. So really, what was he supposed to do in that situation? And you'd think Rick Flag Sr., despite losing his son, despite this painful thing, would actually see a little bit of the nuance in the situation, but he can't. I mean, seriously, what a horrible guy. I have a video coming out that I'm almost done with about the Augie Smith, the alternate Augie Smith, the Blue Dragon, and I was comparing in that video how Augie takes the news of his son's death versus how Rick's, reaction and downward spiral are following his revelation about his son's death. And it's just like two night and day things, Augie understands the nuances of the situation. He gets that his son was a violent, unpredictable guy, a drug addict, and this Chris seems all right. He clearly didn't mean to kill his son, and he has remorse. He even came back here to impersonate him because he felt bad. Rick Flag Sr. reads the full report down to the Peacemaker, what a joke, final words from his son, and his takeaway is, yep, Peacemaker's evil, that son of a bitch shouldn't have survived, what a joke, what a bastard. And I just think, how can a guy who's spent all these years doing black ops for the government not understand? I mean, I guess he's just blindsided by the death of his son. That's all he can see is just red and wanting vengeance, to the point where he cozies up to Lex Luthor, basically lets a bunch of his buddies out of jail and allows them to run Argus, whilst railing lines. Now, I saw a lot of people saying Rick Flag was doing lines with Luther's cronies, but there's no frame of him actually doing coke with any of them. It's just all the Luther employees. And it seems like they are kind of trying to hide it from Otis. Like, Otis walks up and they're like, oh no, we're getting back to work, see? So the drug use might not be as widespread in the Luther Argus system as one might think, but it's at least a few of those guys. They're definitely doing a bunch of coke. Like evil John Economos Happerson, he's definitely a cokehead, and his buddy, who does not have a name, I believe. But for all of Rick Sr.'s faults, being a cokehead does not appear to be one of them. He does seem to be cool with it, though, and he does seem to be acting like a guy who might be on coke. I honestly think maybe they could have just went the route of having it be Clayface and then just have him actually railing lines with the guys. It would have been pretty funny. Or just have it be Rick Flag, show the degree of his moral degradation. Like, his quest for misguided revenge against Peacemaker has completely changed him into a genuine bad guy, like a twisted evil government. Not even evil, just a bad guy. Your average government administrator. And definitely like a super irresponsible one at that. Like, say what you will about Waller, but she was not this irresponsible. She definitely wouldn't have gotten into bed with Luther without having a bomb put in his neck or some level of insurance against him. And again, that might be the whole narrative purpose of all this, to depict Frank Grillo's character, Rick Flag Sr., as a guy who's just constantly outside of his depth in the government agencies he works for. I mean, we saw a bit of this in Creature Commandos. We also saw how, weak he was and how easy he was to be seduced by that honeypot queen. Or was she a princess? The one that was voiced by Borat's sister. But look, that's enough about Rick Flag Sr. for now. Let's talk a little about Peacemaker, because it felt like, at least to a certain level, a lot of people were saying he didn't get a lot of screen time this season, and he did, it just wasn't really in costume. And again, John Cena's acting is really incredible in this. I mean, he really does just blow The Rock out of the water every time. I'm not a The Rock fan. I loved The Rundown and a couple of other of his movies, like Pain and Gain. I like his performance there, but I really don't like The Rock. And I know this really isn't the proper place to say it. I just felt like throwing that in there. Kind of a Reddit opinion to have, but he just kind of always rubbed me the wrong way. John Cena, on the other hand, he's just so effortlessly good at acting. I mean, definitely, I'm not saying the guy isn't working hard. He definitely is, but he makes it look easy. And maybe it's the writing for this character. Maybe it's just he's able to fall into it so well and just fully embody the character of Peacemaker. But that's still there in spades. And if you love the character of Peacemaker, you're going to still love this season. Again, just not as much as you loved the first one. Because this is also a much more painful season for Peacemaker. And I know that he had to deal with a bunch of shit in the first season too, but this one, well, it sort of takes that and runs with it and expands on that even more. What if he had to suffer even more? And it's all really beautifully acted by John Cena. I mean, he kills it in everything nowadays. The Rock truly could never. And again, I think overall as a season, and it was still an extremely solid season of TV. I know some people keep acting like nothing happened. Well, a good amount happened. It's just some of the things could have been explored a little bit more. And of course, the finale definitely put like a foul taste in a lot of people's mouths. And even that wasn't that bad, really, when you think about it. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff, like the Argus agents going through the QUC, having that little bit of what reminded me of like an old Vietnam or World War II movie where the soldiers are marching in single file line basically, and they're having some moment of banter, like this, when someone's telling a story. It was very much like that, and then horror strikes. In this case, it was the Candyland world with the imps that Peacemaker's dad foreshadowed earlier on in the season. But it totally felt like one of those scenes out of an old war movie. I think like Saving Private Ryan even has a scene exactly like that right before Vin Diesel gets killed or something. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. There's just a lot of good acting all around. Like, yeah, Adrian's actor, Vigilante, he's just, that dude really does kill it. I mean, I always forget that he's British because I cannot detect a hint of his actual voice when he's playing Vigilante. And Danielle Brooks, once again, you see why she's an Oscar nominee. Jennifer Holland and Steve Agee also perfect. Like, they've definitely, as James Gunn says, they've leveled up in their acting. And I thought they were just fine first season too. Like he says it about John Cena. I thought John Cena killed it in the first season too. When I think back to the now famous House of Pain scene from the first season, the first time I saw it, I was just blown away. Like, I was like, wow, John Cena, I can't believe I'm saying this, but he is the fucking man. And it wasn't like I had anything against him prior. I just thought he was this former wrestler turned actor, so I didn't really have like the highest bar for his acting. I thought he was awesome in Suicide Squad. He'd already won me over by that point, but when we saw that House of Pain scene, I was like, holy shit, this dude can do a lot of work, dramatically. Like, he is really, really good. And of course, so there's tons of that this season. As James Gunn said, the first season was more about Peacemaker. This season is more about Chris Smith. So naturally, there was a lot more action in the first season, which is something a lot of people have pointed out. I think Peacemaker only suited up like maybe twice, maybe 3 times tops this whole season. And 2 of those times it was in his alternate counterpart's suit, not his original one from season 1 in Suicide Squad, which is another thing that becomes a point of contention for people. Like if I think back to when the Daredevil show was coming out on Netflix, it was a long time ago, but I feel like a lot of people, or at least people I was talking to, were mad that he didn't actually wear a Daredevil suit until like the last episode. And I didn't really have as much of a problem with it here in Peacemaker. I mean, yeah, I would have liked to see some more action than we got. We didn't really get much outside of Chris unceremoniously killing all those Sons of Liberty. But again, this was a more introspective season, for better or worse. Anyway, moving on. So the alternate world as well as the quantum unfolding chamber were like the big sci-fi plot pieces of the season, and I liked a lot of the stuff they did with the alternate world, even if I felt it could have been further explored, but I guess we haven't necessarily seen the last of it according to James Gunn. But look, there's been a lot of multiverse stuff in general and just movie and TV lately, and it can all get a bit tiring after a while. So I did kind of like how Peacemaker did it in a somewhat minimalist way with these slightly different brand and band names and the reverse personalities on some of the characters. You know, they're not completely flipped, they're not completely reversed, they're just different. In a way that sort of makes sense, like there's core aspects of them sort of remain the same in some cases, and then sometimes it's different. And again, it's all kind of downplayed until the big reveal, of course, that is heavily foreshadowed throughout the season. But I never felt any of the multiverse stuff was overdone in this, and I thought that the alternate versions of these characters, that whole concept, I thought it was handled well, especially with Augie and how he was nice, but also how it contrasted with how similar a character like Vigilante was to his prime counterpart. You know, Augie was like a completely different character. You know, there were certain aspects of him that were the same, and Vigilante was almost the same exactly as his prime counterpart. I mean, shit, Vigilante 2 seems a bit more sane from what we saw. He even seemed kind of shocked at his counterpart's graffiti comparison to his fighting the Nazi regime, which was pretty funny, if you ask me. I thought that was a good scene. That actor who plays Vigilante is excellent. He can totally carry a scene where it's just him talking to himself. It's not exactly easy to do. Now, I did see a lot of people pointing out that it felt like we didn't get to see much of Vigilante this season, and I do think that with the less action-oriented script that there wasn't as much for a character like him to do this season in terms of fights and stuff, but he was explored a bit more, you know. We got to see his basement, which was pretty cool, and he kind of did grow as a character, you know. His love of Peacemaker now extends to the other members of the group, like John and Adebayo, even Harcourt in his own way, like he has this weird friendship with Harcourt. As we saw in the first season, they do work well together. Speaking of which, the other members of the 11th Street Kids were all in excellent form as well. Economos was hilarious all season, especially anything he had to do with Bordeaux, like when he said he had her mangled corpse as his background, when he told her that it was her job to deal with his shit. All that was excellent. The only time it was rough to watch was when he had to provide a distraction in the finale. That was like Office level hard to watch, which may have been the point. I liked a lot of the new characters. I mean, they worked for the most part. A lot of them, like Flurry, were really likable. He kind of grew from annoying to likable by the end, but overall I liked his character a lot. Overall, I think the best thing about this season was seeing how this group of people that went through this serious sci-fi life and death shit together in the first season has continued to go about their lives after their big world-saving adventure, and how they're all still connected and hang out like a normal group of friends. And so we get to see how the events of the previous season have impacted them and their lives, while still getting to witness them go on another grand adventure again, even if it's not the one I may have expected. But yeah, overall, I thought it was a pretty solid season, and if I give the first season a 10, which I give very few things a 10, but I think the first season was pretty perfect, then I'm going to say this one has to land on probably like a 7 or a 7.5 if it would have ended on the 7th episode. Not that the finale is as bad as people are making it out to be, it's just, it feels like the beginning of another show. It is definitely not super satisfying. Whereas I actually think the ending of episode 7 was a pretty satisfying ending for the season. I mean, sure, there would have been less payoff for some of the Argus stuff, but it would have been better for the characters of Peacemaker, I think, if that's where it left off. And I'm not saying that the checkmate reveal was bad, it was just, I think the way it was done was a bit unexpected and kind of out of nowhere. I mean, it's not like I didn't know what they were doing. As soon as Harcourt said she had to introduce Bordeaux to Adebayo, I kind of figured they were going to build some sort of their own agency, and it turned out to be Checkmate. But again, this was all stuff that it just felt like an odd episode of Peacemaker is all. And again, the stuff in the hotel room, and there was some really good acting this episode as well, like the scene between Adebayo and Vigilante in his basement where she has to sort of trick him into spending the money to bail Chris out and then spend it on building Checkmate. That was a really good scene because Vigilante and her, they're like two excellent actors, and they fully are able to embody their characters, and it feels like a really believable scene. That's why I love it. And I love the idea of Vigilante. He's suggesting we kill a judge's family as opposed to just use this money to bail out Peacemaker. It's a very on-brand character. That shit was excellent and hilarious. So that's what I mean. Even the final episode that everybody's complaining about, I think it has some pretty good stuff. It just doesn't really feel like the final episode of Peacemaker. That's all. And I probably said that too many times. I think the season overall is still absolutely enjoyable and worth watching and good. It just wasn't as good as the first season. Something, again, I've said probably too many times. It's got some really great highs, some really high highs, if you will, and interesting concepts, character work, and world building, but I would say personally that it doesn't really come together as cohesively as the first season, and it certainly doesn't end in the most satisfying way, but I definitely enjoy it both on the first watch and the multiple rewatches I've done for this video and for the video that I'm doing next about Augie Smith. And saying that the second season couldn't live up to the first season, especially in terms of its ending, isn't really fair, and it's not really a diss because, again, the first season had a perfect ending, all tied together with a beautiful montage, too. It sort of mastered this sort of hopeful, satisfying, yet somewhat bittersweet, almost traumatized ending, and it was just so beautifully made. And this finale and montage of them building Checkmate felt like the first chapter in something new than like a satisfying conclusion to what I had just watched, if that makes sense. So before I finish this review, you can't really review a James Gunn thing fully without covering the music choices, and I think that the overall soundtrack was just as solid as the first season, like in every way. Now, maybe I am a little biased because this is generally a genre that I love. I mean, it's a couple different genres, but I like all the music on both seasons of this show. And when it comes to ranking music, especially when it's all music I like, it's really hard for me to put stuff over one another, especially these two different compilation albums of songs. But there wasn't a single song on either soundtrack that I disliked. I'd say that maybe season 1 had the better montages, not necessarily am I saying it had the better songs, because again, I just said that they were tied. And it's mainly because I don't think anything this season is going to top the House of Pain or I Apologize or even the monster montages from the first season. I mean, there were definitely some good, even extremely good ones this season, like Chris and Adrian chopping up Peacemaker to Evil Thoughts by Foxy's Shazam. Or the Dreamer one when Chris sees Keith alive and older for the first time. That was really done. Him walking through the library. That was excellent. I would even go so far as to call it haunting. But it doesn't end there. I think my favorite montage might have been the one with Veins of Jenna. And it wasn't really a montage. It was just sort of the final action scenes of a really good episode cut with a really good song. And shit, I am a little biased here too because Veins of Jenna had one of my favorite songs from the previous season. So I do just like the band, even though this song was from their second singer, I believe. But really my only one complaint that I have regarding the music of this season was how they used the opening song in the finale. And it's not because they used it, it's just how they used it. And it's really only because I'm comparing it to how masterfully season 1's opening song was used during the big battle of the finale of season 1. It's like sort of a part of the cinematography. It's part of the story and the battle itself. It's muffled by gunfire and then it starts to distort after it looks like the heroes have been defeated. It was one of the most perfect uses of song I've seen in a media, A perfect use of the song and a perfect payoff to the opening, Do you in fact really want to taste it? And you compare it to this season's final use of the opening song, which is really good. I do love Oh Lord by Foxy Shazam. But really the purpose of the use of this song was just to have a live concert and sort of cut it in between the shots of them establishing Checkmate. It's not really hard to see why it's less satisfying than having Peacemaker's dad's ghost come up and stare maniacally behind him after he'd seemingly overcome most of his demons. That was a perfect, ominous, bittersweet ending. showing us that he has not fully overcome the trauma of his father, and he is not completely healed from all of his problems. He's still got a lot of work to do. But there was something beautiful in that he now has this new family, he has this new support system, and this new confidence in himself. It's just really well done. Although I will say I like how the use of the song started with Chris's little victory dance about finally hearing that Harcourt had feelings for him and that he wasn't crazy. I liked that, but the concert, in my opinion, could have just been during the credits. I don't think it needed to be part of the actual show. Of course, that's just a creative choice I disagree with. Overall, there was less action this season for a show like Peacemaker, but that's only noticeable because the first season had a sort of perfect balance between action, comedy, and drama with this sort of like sci-fi body snatcher backdrop setting, if that's not too many words. This one, as James Gunn has said, and many other people have said, was more introspective for most of the characters. Chris and Harcourt got the bulk of it, but there was some focus on the others as well. There was also the side plot with Red St. Wild and the Eagly stuff. That was entertaining, and the reveal of Eagly being the prime eagle was really nice. I mean, it was pretty obvious that he wasn't a normal eagle. And I liked the use of Michael Rooker and how that plot was sort of handled quickly and out of the way. It had enough people wondering if Eagly was going to die, though. It had me worried. So I think that was effective. But as much as I loved Michael Rooker, I don't think he was going to beat Christopher Heyerdahl's character Locke from Season 1. What an absolute menace. I think I probably want to end the video here, though, because my videos have been running long lately, and I'm trying to be a little bit more concise, at least with stuff like this. I will probably be talking a bit more about the season, though. I have a video about Augie Smith, and I've been really wanting to finish up, so hopefully that's done. But up next is probably the Raymond video. Anyway, let me know what you guys thought about the season in the comments. As always, I hope you guys found the video to be at least somewhat interesting or insightful in some way. As always, let me know what you think, though. If you liked the video, please like it, and if you dislike it, please dislike it. If you like hearing me ramble on various subjects, please consider subscribing. It's all we do here now. And if for whatever reason you want to help support the channel, I have a Patreon linked in the description. But enough of all that, let's have our outro and then the final thoughts, shall we? So I'm going to try and set up some sort of pattern to the uploads. Like there's going to be like a Dark Souls lore video, and then maybe something new like a Fallout one, or like an Elder Scrolls one, or a Zelda one, or something like that. And then in between the lore videos, I'll try and throw like these random reviews, because I have a lot to say about movies and TV, at least the ones I've watched. And I figure, I might as well treat this channel like a sort of journal and get them out, because, well, I don't really believe in using Letterboxd, I guess. But those are a lot more minimal in terms of editing, so it's not really a big deal. Unless I'm trying to do a whole video focused on a character or an episode, then I'm going to try and edit it more. I'll try and fight back against the whole copyright system, and they always want to just boom. If you use more than like 7 seconds of a TV show, it's like boom, you're now claimed. You have to blur it out. It's a whole thing. I probably bitched about it before, and I'll likely bitch about it again. So you have my apologies for this and in advance. Anyway, as for the next show I'll probably cover, I've been wanting to do one on that show From. If you haven't watched it, you definitely should. It's very enjoyable. It's sort of like Lost with a more supernatural premise or concept. Oh, and I wanted to do a review video about Alien Earth, because I did finish that. I watched it all the way through, and I do have a lot to say about it. And then again, I'll cover Gen V after its finale comes out in like a couple days. There's also some more obscure stuff that I'm planning on covering. I'm definitely just trying to get back in. I know I say this all the time. I'm trying to get back into my old upload more frequently kind of schedule. And if I, if I interject these little easy to edit videos in between the more complex to edit ones, then it's a lot less stressful, because sometimes the daunting task of editing something after I've been busy all day and doing other stuff, it's just it's crushing sometimes, and it leads to delays. It's a whole thing. So you guys have my apologies for that. But that being said, there's a lot of cool stuff coming. Like I have something planned to do on the Gods of Anor Londo, the Knights of Gwyn, the royal family of Lothric, and of course that super big Dark Souls 2 enemies video that I really just need to get around and finish recording. But yeah, thank you guys for your patience as always. But I believe that was all I wanted to talk about. I hope everybody's doing well. You will be hearing from me very, very soon. I have another video that should follow this one pretty quickly, and it is a lore video. So I will be seeing you guys very soon. Until then, be safe, and yeah, I'll see you.